Hey, and that part that you had there talking about cloned meat, that is such a false statement that they're telling you there. Cloned means like Dolly the sheep, where you get one, you clone it, and here comes another one, right? That's what you're getting in your mind. They're going to take it all the way to maturation from a cell all the way through the pregnancy and then bring it up to a full animal again, and then you're going to get your meat. It's not like that. They're using the blood and plasma from that one animal to clone it literally in dishes of a protein-grown substrate. On a cellular level, they are cloning cells, but they're not cloning an animal. That's what they're looking at. They're going to try to gaslight you the whole way of what this thing is. So words are very important in this argument here, incredibly important. They've already set us up as a clone as a 1 = 1 from the parent species. It is not. We're at the cellular level, and please understand that. Glued together with other pieces, and then takes the shape of a steak, and then is wrapped in plastic, sprayed with pink slime, and then put out into the supermarket for you to eat.
A very relevant discussion will be had tonight. That I can assure you of, friends. We are going to have David Dubine back on the program. Very knowledgeable when it comes to food cycles, about everything that's going on with the food situation. Food has become such an integral part of the celebration, of course, throughout the years, as with many American holidays that are celebrated. Food is a very, very big deal, and quite a bit of money, as you might expect, is spent on filling our table with food and our bellies. Meanwhile, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy says new dietary guidelines are expected to be released next month that will end the, quote, war on saturated fats, and also stress the importance of protein. We've also seen companies like Cheetos and Doritos and Pepsi remove the artificial dyes from their products. So, I mean, it sounds like both of those things are good things, removing saturated fats and artificial dyes from our diet, especially if they have adverse health effects. But here's one that will turn your stomach. Actually, in Canada, mutant meat may soon enter Canadian grocery stores. Apparently, it can be sold. The products will soon, well, they've been allowed to be sold, but now there's a change in policy. So these products can soon be sold without mandatory safety reviews or labeling. They do not have to tell you whether or not this is real or fake meat. Consider that, especially if you are buying meat for Thanksgiving or Christmas or any other celebration, or just as a part of a regular diet. It is the state that we live in, somewhere between the paranormal and the abnormal. I'm Jeremy Scott. Glad to have back on David Dubine. He has studied food cycles throughout history and how they affect food production. The host of the Adapt 2030 channel, also the Civilization Cycle podcast. Very timely that we should have him on. David, welcome back.
Appreciate you having me back on, especially in this time where everybody celebrates food and harvest. You know, through history, we always celebrate. The whole world celebrated, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, this time of the year, because food was coming in. It was abundant. They could see how much food they had to take them through the winter. And this is a very special time for humanity. We just take food for granted right now, but it shouldn't be.
And people didn't know 2 weeks ago, even maybe a week ago, whether or not they were going to have food on the table for Thanksgiving or where they were going to go to get food.
We've all seen the headlines talk about Ozempic and similar miracle weight loss shots, but what most people don't realize is that major analysis just found out that people who stopped taking these weight loss injections gain nearly all their weight back within a year. That's the catch. These drugs only work while you're on them. They're expensive, and the moment you stop, your body fights back. This is why, like BioTrust, GLP-1 Elevate, and everybody these days is obsessed with weight management results. GLP-1 helps my body naturally trigger the same hunger-controlling, craving-reducing signals that Ozempic would, without needles, prescriptions, or the scary side effects. It also helps reduce hunger hormones, supports fat loss instead of muscle loss, and helps maintain healthy blood sugar levels. For a limited time, you can grab a bottle of BioTrust GLP-1 Elevate right now for 40% off only at trimwithadapt2030.com. Plus, you'll receive a 60-day satisfaction guarantee and the free express shipping on subscriptions. Once again, go to trimwithadapt2030.com or click on that link in the description box below to get this deal right now.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I don't know if that was just to bring light to the abuses and the fraud and the waste and also make everybody reapply for EBT benefits and then really shake out the shysters, for a better term, and get them back on more healthy foods and cutting a lot of what was available to purchase before, like these junk foods and highly processed foods. And was it a wake-up call for those paying attention that the things you guaranteed supermarkets to have your food might not be? Now, perhaps they were targeting a segment of the population to say, hey, it's not as stable as you think it would be. But those with eyes and ears to hear might take that as a more general message. Maybe your supermarket just won't have everything all the time. Maybe that's the message also moving into 2026.
So, I mean, what's your read then on the shutdown? There was some agenda behind it, or it could have been a test for something that, much larger, much more prolonged that could come at a later time?
Well, I think the soft messaging is that digital ID is here for everybody. You're the abuser of the EBT system. Guaranteed, we got to put digital IDs in to stop those fraudsters. And most people will go, yeah, I applaud that. We need digital IDs for that. But at the same time, if we do come to some sort of low food production time where a war would do it. It doesn't have to be jet streams going out of their flows and, our precipitation patterns disturbed and our crop yields globally down 10 or 20% in a year. What if there was a war? And that would bring us back to, let me hear the bell, ding, 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 World War II, aficionados of history, rationing. But this time, they're not going to give you a little paper coupon book with your ration for, 2 pounds of butter with your stamp. It's going to be all digital. And is this what they were trying to get as a larger messaging? Hey, your food might not be as stable at the points where we freely can go in and purchase if we have funds. But moving through, you're going to need IDs, and it might be tightly controlled. That's kind of some of the messaging, at least on the wider scope, they were trying to broadcast out, because they never start everything the same exact day to get people into a new system. It's too much of a shock. I mean, COVID, it did it. People were forced trained so quickly. But since COVID had run its course and they trained everybody on instantly how to, move left or move right, stand in line, do this, jump back 6 feet, it would be much more easy to implement a digital rationing card or some sort of food rationing or this type of stipend system, because people would just stand in line again so quickly and be like, okay, I just need to eat. That's the thing. People will do anything to feed their families. You saw those insane videos saying that we're going to rob your food out in the supermarket parking lot if we can't go in and buy it. My family needs to eat. And that was such like a wake-up call right there, too, that people will do anything to feed their families. Anything.
Robbing people as they come out of the store with their goods, as they leave a food bank, as they're just trying to enjoy a holiday with their family because maybe they were fortunate to come upon the means to do so, and here's someone desperate hanging out in the parking lot who's going to take advantage of the situation. That is a scary thought.
That's just history in itself. We are so blessed and so thankful to be in this period of quote-unquote stability. Like when you left your village before, that's why people always traveled in bands of 5, 6 men with the couple of children or women. They just couldn't go by themselves anywhere. I mean, there were bandits routinely everywhere. I mean, the chances of you not getting robbed were so low at that point. You locked up the house at night. People didn't go playing around in the evenings when you traveled from village to village, town to town. Back, I say, as little as 400 years ago, 300 years ago, you took extreme caution. The forests were far larger. The animals were far more numerous, and the bandits were also in and out so fast. Like banditry on the roads and the trails and the networks of that was a real thing. I had a friend, Craig, he served in Somalia, and he was telling me that they would establish zones, safe zones to go distribute food. But as soon as the people that came in to procure the food, once they left, they couldn't patrol the roads where these people were going back to their villages, and they were pounced on pretty much all the time after they were about a quarter mile, half a mile, maybe sometimes a little more if they had line of sight out. But as soon as they got past that line of sight zone, they were literally on their own, and the bandits were everywhere out there trying to pick off their food that they just received from the U.S. government, donations, whatever that was. That even happens today. So would it not happen here? I mean, could it not happen here?
Well, I mean, you think about it, this was only 2 weeks. Imagine if it did stretch into Thanksgiving. We certainly have many people who are still food insecure because maybe it took them a couple of weeks to get their SNAP benefits or whatever the case happens to be. But people would resort to such desperate measures if they needed to.
Well, wouldn't you, Jeremy? Seriously, if you were starving to death, you had to get food or steal from somebody or your family, one of your family members was going to die, or you were, would you not go the same direction?
I mean, that's a tough one because...
It's a tough one. I know it is for all of us. Now,
because it's not
anybody
right.
hearing our voices, please.
Morally, I mean, you're putting me up against a rock and a hard place, but I appreciate it. Morally, I couldn't bring myself to do it, but we would have to be thinking in a different mindset, would we not?
We would. I'm going to have to push you against a rare earth rock right there, by the way. And yeah, but I would ask that question out there, like, really, how far and how hungry would you get? Because through history, I'll tell you a story about World War II. There was a girl that was working with the Allied forces after World War II, and during the bread rationing at this time in Germany, people would bring in jewelry and diamond rings and gold necklaces, anything just to trade for pieces of bread extra. And she had this box that was probably about twice the size and the regular height of a cigar box. And she called it her like dirty secret box, or she had some name for it that didn't quite translate exactly into English. But she never, as she died and her kids had found this, she left a note with it. She's like, I was so guilty. I could never, ever sell any of this jewelry, even if I needed the money, because the hardship those people went through to trade diamond rings and gold just to get a slice of bread. She's like, I couldn't do it because the jewelry she got was over and above what the ration cards were. So she was doing something illegal, by taking extra jewelry to give away extra bread. But she's like, these people needed that extra. I knew their families. I knew the kids that were there. They needed that bread. History is riddled with this. It is the norm, not the exception.
And it's not just people who are on food stamps, as they say, on these SNAP benefits. Once the supply chain is impeded and there's now a threat, anybody bringing in food may decide their lives are in danger doing so because it is so scarce. Imagine that delivery drivers are now facing a threat, people hanging outside their vehicle wanting the goods, maybe wanting to rob them for those goods. This could get very dire, could get very dire quick. Your thoughts?
Well, it depends on how long something like that chaos that was created in the EBT, it was a message to everybody that something could go wrong. So, it did stop. They partially funded, next month in December 1st, everybody will get their full benefits, minus those who had to reapply because of the fraud. But if it were allowed to be going on much longer, then we get into the exercise is real. Because at some point, they're going to require you to get a digital ID to access food. Now, we were talking about just banditry on the road. Venezuela, if you go back, say, 3 years or so, they had some real difficulty with currency. And people were robbing chickens on the highways. Literally, they would stop a truck. You've ever seen one of those going down our highways? They got chickens in small plastic cages there, stacked up, probably a couple thousand in a truck. But they were just stopping people on highways. And, when they did, like hundreds and hundreds, multiple hundreds of people just like literally come out of the woodwork, ripped the tarps off and just started pulling those chickens out of the cages to leaving everywhere. They're like, it was one of the most insane things I've ever seen. And I was thinking, they're not really even starving at the point of, what we've read about in World War II with different sieges like Leningrad and Stalingrad, these types of, where they were actually eating the wallpaper paste off the back of their wallpaper to stay alive and trading recipes on how to boil leather belts at the time. Like, that's the kind of desperation it went to. We don't have that luxury anymore. We can't even eat the paste off of our wallpaper because it's so chemical these days. But the point being, and the messaging is food is going to get, stranger to get. So I would say grow your own, learn how to garden, learn how to work with others, know where your farmers are, because when it comes down to it, if food is really that difficult to procure, the only one that's going to save yourself is yourself. and your families maintaining gardens to continue to be able to eat and also trade your extra for something else you're not growing.
We've all seen the headlines talk about Ozempic and similar miracle weight loss shots, but what most people don't realize is that major analysis just found out that people who stopped taking these weight loss injections gain nearly all their weight back within a year. That's the catch. These drugs only work while you're on them. They're expensive, and the moment you stop, your body fights back. This is why like BioTrust, GLP-1, Elevate, and everybody these days is obsessed with weight management results. GLP-1 helps my body naturally trigger the same hunger-controlling, craving-reducing signals that Ozempic would, without needles, prescriptions, or the scary side effects. It also helps reduce hunger hormones, supports fat loss instead of muscle loss, and helps maintain healthy blood sugar levels. For a limited time, you can grab a bottle of BioTrust GLP-1 Elevate right now for 40% off only at trimwithadapt2030.com. Plus, you'll receive a 60-day satisfaction guarantee and the free express shipping on subscriptions. Once again, go to trimwithadapt2030.com or click on that link in the description box below to get this deal right now.
It's been like that, again, through history. We are just in this such lovely, amazing time where we have supply chains now at the point where it's nearly just in time. First time in human history for, say, 12,000 years since the Younger Dryas impact. You know, if that were to disintegrate, then we're going to go back to a pioneering lifestyle. And the pioneers grew most of that stuff, and they traded what they couldn't grow themselves.
So the barter system, basically.
It was. And it wasn't so much about a thing for a thing. It was a skill for 1 hour traded for a skill for another hour. So, yeah, you got to think about also your skill sets. What would you be able to trade for a skill set for somebody in terms of getting a physical good, or the other way around? Doesn't always have to be a thing for a thing. It could be knowledge for an actual physical item.
Paying it forward, your work could then, say if you were growing food, feed X amount of people, and then you are rewarded with a little bit of food for your efforts, and on and on.
Could be with the community gardens. Then if they understand how to save seed and then separate that seed, then suddenly what you were growing just to eat becomes a value product in itself. You know, so the overage of whatever is produced, and then they're going to be working from one community to another community, maybe not just your neighbor, but, you know, other segments of neighborhoods that are overproducing as well. And this is how this current system we have today evolved out of, after we had better stability, more law and order, and then through the late 1800s, all those towns along the railways and newly established roads, which were horse carts and, you know, horse tracks before, those people started to trade amongst each other on a more frequent basis. And then it's just, why don't we set up a factory here, and then we'll do it on a centralized level, and then we'll distribute out. But just before we hit that factory production level, we were at the point where if we would have stayed there, pretty much everything could have been handled except for some high techs and, you know, this sort of thing. But 40% of all food produced in America, 40%, 40, that we ate during the World War II was produced at the home garden level. So you got to realize that, like, 40%, that's quite the large number. That would alleviate a lot of stress. And where's my food coming from if we were producing 40% of everything we ate today in America in local gardens, community gardens? I mean, it's a different way to think about the trajectory we're going. I hate the way the government just says your food's in jeopardy, but they give us no training. They give these people the EBT, the food stamps, but they don't give them any training on even how to grow lettuce, the simplest thing ever to grow. They don't teach them how to grow micro greens or do anything with a hand of seed. You can buy those beans at any place, black-eyed peas. You get them for like $1 for a pound. You can grow a heap of microgreens out of that, and they're super tasty. That not even the most basic training on what you can get in a supermarket and sprout it out and turn it into microgreens for nutritious foods. That's not even, they're not even giving that base. You could give it to them in a pamphlet. And if somebody wanted to do training for neighborhoods, perhaps you have to do the training before you can get the re-up on the cards. But no, none of this is, you just got to rely on the system. Rely on the system.
Yeah, I mean, how have we come to get to this point? 42 million people in the U.S., 22 million households, and, you know, no disrespect to those who rely on this, but how have we come to, you know, the point we are?
Well, I have to think it's part schooling system, the way that, if you're older, if you're, let's say 50 years or older, then you understood a completely different world of work ethic and what was expected of you, of just for like the base operation of how you had to exist in our world is very, very different than it is today. Like people just don't want to work. I don't want to work. Well, that was unacceptable when I was growing up. You could not even say that. People would look at you like you got purple heads and they would scream at you, get to work. Like there's none of this, oh, be kind and DEI and everybody equal and all her will look about their feelings. No, that was like, you don't want to work? You're crazy. You're going to work. That wasn't really a thought to tell people, I'm too lazy. I don't want to work. You go to work for me because you're paying taxes and your taxes are going to feed me and my kids. Like that was unacceptable.
I mean, say the internet is down and you can't access those funds. The power is out. So the stores can't open. You can't buy the goods. The system is shut down because of a government shutdown. There's no funding for it. I mean, the list goes on, and now panic starts to set in. When the first of the month comes, people get their food and benefits, and they can go to the store and purchase those items, feed themselves and their families, and especially with holidays coming up, it's just not a good position for anybody to be in. But we're trying to get you to think outside the box tonight. Not everybody can be self-sufficient. There are many who rely on this, and we've been talking about it with David Devine tonight. So this could have been a test for a much larger situation here, whether this was orchestrated or not, to see how the public responds. In many cases, communities were stepping forward. So while people on food stamps weren't able to go to the store and buy food, and by the way, we were seeing less meat available, not because people were buying it. Stores were just not purchasing as much because customers weren't coming in and buying that, because many of them did so on food stamps. So there was a ripple effect to this, and then you talk about community organizations and people who are well off stepping forward to feed the needy and donating. They would then use those resources by going to the store and purchasing items they may not have ordinarily purchased, but doing it for somebody who is in need. So a different cycle of food. And you've studied these food cycles, David. So your thoughts on the impact of the food cycles just based on the shutdown itself?
Well, you would call that corporate welfare, where some of these companies' bottom lines have been hit because, unbeknownst to me until I started to do a few videos and do some research on all of this, I didn't realize companies like Walmart and Target, Amazon through Whole Foods, Kroger, are some of the largest recipients of EBT purchase. So that in itself funnels money into certain corporations where most of these people would then go in and buy. And I didn't know that you could buy online. You could get lobster online delivered from like Whole Foods because it was EBT eligible. And I'm looking at this going, wait a second. You're allowed to get all of this and you can order online and get it delivered to your home? That's just far over, you're way over the range on that one, where it was acceptable to get that stuff delivered to your house. I can't even do that. I'm not paying somebody to come up to my house and give that extra money for them to go shop around the store and pick up my cart full of stuff and bring it up. That's insane. And you could do that on EBT, though. Before the break, you were talking about what's acceptable, and I was just going back to that for a second. In my day and age, that was unacceptable for you to say, I don't want to work. It is acceptable now. And I'm wondering, moving forward, then where does it go? It's kind of like a sine wave. We're at the top there. It's unacceptable. And now we're at the bottom of the wave where it's totally acceptable. You can do. And then I'm wondering where it moves from here. The visuals or the visualization or the awareness caused most of that the system to break. So the old system as it was a few weeks ago or a few months ago is a Humpty Dumpty. It's not going to come back in its exact same form again. You could maybe super glue some pieces together, but there are going to be so many changes with the program. It alerted so many people to the abuse and fraud. Now there's so many more people looking around. And, the things you can't buy. So if you can't buy potato chips and sodas and this sort of heavily processed food, then take me down the corporate ladder. Who's producing a lot of that? Who's the main producer of that type of food? General Mills. You got to go through a few of these. Will their shareholders be hit because the EBT recipients aren't allowed to buy that type of food anymore because they were a major percentage of that types of purchase of ultra processed foods? Now, if that leg of the whole food pyramid gets knocked over, then how do corporate earnings get hit because the government's not subsidizing that, but they're still subsidizing fresh food, veg, bake at home things from Walmart, get a pound of flour or whatever. They don't even give cooking classes to the people that receive benefits. I know if you're going to get it and you're hungry, you should be buying in bulk so you can prepare at home. You should be preparing home cooked meals where, you buy a pound of this, a pound of that, and you can make several meals out of it, not get one microwave dinner that costs 3 times as much. Like there's massive shifts to the system going on. And I just don't know how the recipients are going to be able to respond to that and adjust to it. But I think we're also just being soft set up to accept different ways for us to access food in the general public, even if you can afford it or not. I see that direction going. Everybody's talking digital ID. They're curtailing what we can and how we can move around the planet. They're starting carbon credits for the amount of input into your food. Like in the UK, they put how many kilograms of carbon on the packaging now, on the product. Like they had a sandwich, nice like a ham sandwich, it was 8 kilograms. And they're like, your whole allotment for a whole day is 100, right? So you bought almost 10% of your full allotment in the future of 100 kg per day of CO2. That one sandwich was 8 kilograms. So they're starting to mark this up, and we're getting into this system here of why is it going to be so tightly controlled is my question. I know we can see the end result. We see where it's going. But why is it going to be so tightly controlled? That is my main number one question. What is the event that is going to happen that is going to cause so much disruption that food is going to be that controlled? We're not there yet, but we're creeping quickly toward it. But why? Why do we need that much control over food?
Yeah, and what would that actually look like? I mean, would it be armed guards at some of these locations, like say the National Guard or something like that? Checking cards. I mean, you've talked about food rationing and ID cards for many years now.
Yeah, well, how far did it go out of control that was in the news for everybody to see around different supermarkets, Walmarts, Targets, this sort of thing, just generally in the United States during that time, with thousands of those videos coming out, encouraging others to go steal and flash mob at certain stores at certain times? Was that a psychological test to see how many people would really go to that level, even though their benefits just went down for a 2-week period, to see what the participation rate might have been, and then they could gauge that out as some sort of sociological experiment. Okay, if we let it run for 3 weeks, it'll reach this percentage. If we let it go for a full month, it'll reach this, based on what their data flow was from that 2-week event, and the number of videos and the number of people and arrests and that sort of thing. There has to be some sort of ratio with that. They learned a lot from this. And not only that, but the people who would stand up, like the regular law-abiding citizen, like how many of them actually had altercations in the store? Like, bro, you're not leaving with that. You got to put that back. A lot of store employees had that. A lot of just regular people that I've seen some videos had interaction in that same level there. So again, this all information that be gleaned about how much of the law-abiding citizen population would stand up, how much of the thuggery population would continue their nefariousness and theft and that sort of thing, and just the general participation rate on both sides of that in this event. Even though it didn't go as far as it could, it just went on, it's like just barely dipped the toe in the water. I mean, how much information could you glean from that alone before any real event occurred? It was just the thought of the event occurring.
And now the event has occurred, and hopefully more minds are open to this. Amongst the vote to reopen the government back on the 12th was some legislation that also affected food safety. Folks may not be aware about that. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, David, in your opinion?
Well, it depends whose industry you're talking about, because they turned any hemp and CBD products illegal again. They put that back on the Schedule 1 list. But they had built up an industry for, 10 plus years, allowing people to get into that entire new product line, for a better term. It interfered with some industries, as it always did. That what movie, Reefer Madness back in the 1930s, because so many people were producing hemp oil for their cars and burning and creating their own motor oils and the building materials from the time as well, interfering with a lot of different products. So the things they always slide in when you have these votes here is kind of a little ridiculous on the spending bills, because they should be disassociated with that. They should be voted on one by one. But the USDA and these different kind of agencies that are supposed to, help us in the food safety, and the FDA, there's so many toxic and poisonous products out there that should have never, ever gone through anywhere. A lot of them banned in Europe, but still allowed in the United States. So these agencies that say they're protecting you, I don't get it. There's so many toxins they allow in the food supply. And, I wanted to talk about America's largest meat supplier closing. Vast beef processing plants are closing as well. This is one of the largest in America, Tyson. I'm sure everybody's heard of that. They're closing their number one largest plant in Lexington, Nebraska. And they're citing that livestock is the lowest since the 1950s. But again, on the very fine print, what they try to do is say, well, if we can't have the cattle and livestock that you're used to in the traditional, like, cowboy sense of getting it out on the range and grazing it and bringing it into, or put them in the feedlots, whatever however they do it, they now want to go to bioengineered meat, which means they take the blood from the animal, from one animal, and they put it in petri dishes, and then they grow that cell culture back into a muscle or something resembling a muscle. So you have to think about the way they're looking at it is the amount of space to grow one cow to continuously pull blood from, to then create all these bioengineered meats, is supposedly much more efficient than having, let's say, 1 million cattle out in our, Midwest grow belts that are being fed from the corn there, and traditionally that area all up and down Missouri, Nebraska, Kansas, this whole area down into Texas. This is a cattle belt, right? They're saying, oh, it's done so much damage, and environmentally, we need to go now. And they're not milking cows in the traditional sense of milk. They're milking cows for their plasma and red blood to then put in mega factories on petri dishes to grow, and not petri dish, but they have industrial size lab grow facilities now. This is the direction they want to take it. So shutting down, and then how safe do you think that is? Never been tested on, 20, 30 year human trials or anything. It's just like, well, it came from an animal, still part of an animal, so you might as well eat it like an animal. And that meat glue too should be good stuff. This is the direction they want to take us. And that was snuck in that bill too, along with knocking the knees out of all the hemp growers out there. So, they got 2 for 1 on that, at least in this go around. So I don't know if you would agree or disagree, anybody out there listening, about the FDA really trying to protect you, and the USDA in there really trying to make sure that all the meats that you get are pure and clean, because the things they're allowed to put in them and their life cycle from, when first born as a calf all the way standing on the weight scale at the end there. It's actually frankenfood and atrocious that they would even let that go out to be consumed by a human. But I digress, Jeremy.
Right. Don't
want to go too far on that.
Yeah. What is Canada doing? Oh, because, it does seem like they're pushing us towards the synthetic route, synthetic meat, synthetic produce of the kind.
They are. Well, that's not just us. It seems to be a global phenomenon. Put this in again. Now, and here's another thing, too. Looking back in history, if you go back, say, I'll even go like 8,000 years back, not all the way 12,000, because we didn't have really established societies, but 5,000 years. We'll come somewhere around that era, the class, if you're thinking Egyptians and Sumerians and Hittites and Babylonians, okay, that plus a little bit far back. If you come all the way and stretch from history from that point all the way until today, never in human history have all countries united under one umbrella and moved like a school of fish with the same protocols, the same laws, and that same movement to a certain direction, except for COVID. And now, again, on the digital ID and the lab-grown foods, along with the carbon credit rationing agendas that are coming in. So those are all kind of wrapped into a triple helix there. Only twice in human history has it happened, and you have to ask again, what is it about the food that they need to, do they know there's some sort of massive event? I wouldn't say a cometary impact that's going to wipe out, all the flora and fauna on the northern half of our world or the southern half of the world, but something that would be of such large proportion that there literally won't be large animals grazing any longer because of either a volcanic eruption that blocks out the skies and a year without a summer globally, or some kind of massive event toward that direction. That we're going to have to grow everything in labs. We're going to have to do everything in factories, and it's all going to be it's really going to be from a quote unquote base animal source. But everything from this point forward, including your fish, that's all lab grown now. Chicken, they're lab growing any kind of chicken products. That's what McNuggets are using now, lab grown. And then we got Campbell's soup coming out, and they're saying they're all using, bioengineered meats in their soups and GMO fillers and all these things. It's just strange how the entire planet's gravitating that way as well. All of it tracked, all of it traced, and all of it not natural. At least in my opinion, I really don't think bioengineered food with food glues and meat glues and stuff is natural. I would consider that, because it came from a genetically modified source of foodstuffs anyway to begin with. So you're already tinkered with nature by changing at least something in there on its natural genome. So that doesn't even, that's why they can patent it. It's no longer that same plant that just grew wild that they couldn't patent. They tinker around in there, change a couple of DNA sequences, gene over here, gene over there. Oh, it's a new plant. We can patent it. Now you need to buy the seed from us, controlling the farmers. If I might say one more thing, has anybody been following this story here off of AgWeb? Well, actually, all the agricultural journals are picking it up. There was a multi-state grain depot, and what they would do is one of the largest ones out of Omaha, Nebraska. It's called Hansen Mueller. They filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Well, what they are is grain silo operators that stretch across 6 states in the middle of our grain belt. So let's say you have 1,000 acres as a farmer. You'll take that corn or the soybean in there. They will bill it up for you. You'll deposit that grain in there, and then the checks will be cut some period of time after that delivery has been made. Hansen Mueller, one of the nation's largest grain merchandisers, millers, processors, grain storage facilities, they filed for Chapter 11. Almost 3,000 farmers that have more than 1,000 acres that have put grain into this whole company's system, where they take your grains in, they weigh it, and then after it is sold, and then the bill of sale comes back from their end buyer, then they pay the farmers out. It's been like this forever, revolving door of credit. But these farmers are not going to be able to pay back. There's no way they can get this money. They've already deposited their grain. So all the money for maturation, planting, harvesting, upkeep, pesticides, all the machinery upkeep, all that's been spent. But there's going to be no payback from all that grain that came in because they did a Chapter 11 on that. So currently there's at least $500 million that should have been paid to farmers that is not going to be. And you might go, whoa, that's crazy. Louisiana, Mississippi, Kansas, Arkansas, Nebraska. But this is the second time it's happened. So 2 of the top 3 in America have gone Chapter 11 that are holding everybody's grains that grew through the year are not going to be getting paid. So do the knockback on that. And who's there to scoop up their land? They're not going to. They're going to confiscate their farm equipment because they're going to get behind on their other payments for that. You start to look at, there's some serious cracks in the food system right now. And this one here, Hansen Mueller, Mueller. These grain processors are, I think, the hidden link that might take down the system, because when the farmers can't get paid, they can't pay their other suppliers in turn for the fuel, for, like I say, the fertilizers, for the different herbicides and pesticides, and that maintenance on the tractors and the equipment and their hands, the farm hands. They can't pay any of that. So then those that would receive payment can't pay those, and it just keeps stepping down, and further back it goes. And it's the second one this year to have that happen too. So what's happening with our farms? I don't see Trump talking about this, assuring us that our farmers are going to get paid for our grain silo operators going Chapter 11 on 2 of the 3 largest in America. This is a big problem people are not talking about.
Or what if the farmer takes a bailout, say from the government or from some wealthy individual or organization, to just get out of the farming business, and then you replace that farm with one of these synthetic operations, and there you go.
Or a data center. if they
Or
have
a
the
data
water
center
rights.
where
A
you
lot of
can
these,
print it, yeah.
well, a lot of these, excuse me, Jeremy, I didn't just mean to talk over there, but a lot of these large farms, anything 2,000 to 5,000, 10,000 acre farms, they all have their own water rights on it. So the amount of water coming out of there, depending on the flow on the rivers or what they're pulling from the aquifers or in conjunction of both, that would definitely be enough to satiate some of the data center's needs. So I'm looking at it as if they wipe out the farmers, you have these vast tracts of open land already graded flat. They don't need to spend any money on that. Very close access to, a lot of these have power plants built close to it because they need operations for dehydrating. And it's just, power's already there. Water's already there. Graded land is already there by the hundreds of thousands of acres. And what do we keep hearing again about data center? They need this. They use the same resources as humans. They need electric, they need water, and they need land. And who's going to buy that? If all these farmers are put out of business, you fill in the blank for me.
Bill Gates. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't have the answer. But
China.
Somebody at that level, BlackRock, Blackstone, whoever it might be that comes in there on that large acquisition of land purchase is then going to take that, maybe divvy some off for a neighborhood or something like this or a factory, and then they're going to pull in a data center if they get the right water, if the correct water rights on that at the acre feet or the cubic meter flow that they need.
Right. Okay. So Canada is what, moving forward with this mutant meat, right?
Yes. And they don't even have to tell the consumer that they are mutant meating it, for a better term. They don't have to inform the consumer that this is in the food supply. And I thought that was a travesty myself, because you go into a store, you might think that, something is in there that looks pure and healthy. And, the steak looks good, because if they can get the coloring right and the marbling right, you're like, damn, that's a damn looking good piece of meat. But it's all artificial at that point, and there's no labeling required. As of yet, maybe people will put up big enough stink where they'll make them required to do that. But as far as I've seen it so far, nothing.
It may be speculation because, synthetic meat isn't largely on the market and there hasn't been testing done. But if they're putting bad stuff into it and there's been testing on that bad stuff, then maybe there's a correlation.
Yeah, they haven't done any human testing long enough, because even this technology for what we consider the newest bioprinting that we have for bioengineered meats has not been around long enough to do any real human tests on it. But Wisteria rats, I would encourage everybody out there, if you have the time, to take a look at Wisteria rats, health implications, eating bioengineered meats. And then you could go a little granular, like bioengineered chicken, bioengineered beef, But so far at those lab studies, as far as it's gone for safety, and again, I would not even trust the FDA to step forward with the $1 billion in lobbying and how the revolving door goes from the FDA over onto a corporate board seat and then back again, or, once they revolve through that industry, they're put into corporate positions, and then they have those ears, eyes, and contact and Rolodex back into the FDA. And it doesn't seem that anything ever is removed from the market or not approved unless it really has some benefit for humanity. So something's very wrong with what's considered safe, and we're trying to protect the American people. It's not. It's corporate interest only, in my opinion. Not, it's just my opinion on this.
And so when the executive of Campbell's Soup says, look, we're feeding people SHIT, this is printed, with a printer, I don't know, should we take that, should we believe that, or should we believe what Campbell's is saying, which is that, no, this is totally real stuff?
That it was a rogue vice president. So I got the newest one here just before we got on the show. This was released and just a few hours ago. Campbell's fires executive secretly recorded saying that its soups are full of bioengineered meats. I'm looking at it as damage control. Because think of this now. They're telling people, mocking you. Plus, we're giving you bioengineered meats which haven't been tested on humans efficiently enough. And good luck.
So, how long before lab-grown turkeys are on our dinner plate, and would we even know? Or maybe it's turducken. I don't know.
They're already there. And if you invite me for Thanksgiving dinner, anybody, it's going to be an interesting dinner. I guarantee you. Hey, and that part that you had there talking about cloned meat, that is such a false statement that they're telling you there. Cloned means like Dolly the sheep, where you get one, you clone it, and here comes another one, right? That's what you're getting in your mind. They're going to take it all the way to maturation from a cell all the way through the pregnancy and then bring it up to a full animal again, and then you're going to get your meat. It's not like that. They're using the blood and plasma from that one animal to clone it literally in dishes with a substrate of a protein-grown substrate, right? And that's how they get the meat. It is not cloned. I mean, I guess in the loosest possible sense of cloning something on a cellular level, they are cloning cells, but they're not cloning an animal. They're cloning the cells. And that's why I'm saying it's so much more efficient. You could probably get 1 million times the amount of beef off of one animal by running it through the bioengineered route to create a protein lab-grown dish source. Scales of efficiency I'll be generous. That's what they're looking at. They're going to try to gaslight you the whole way of what this thing is. So words are very important in this argument here, incredibly important. They've already set us up as a clone as a 1 = 1 from the parent species. It is not. We're at the cellular level, and please understand that. Glued together with other pieces and then takes the shape of a steak and then is wrapped in plastic, sprayed with pink slime, and then put out into the supermarket for you to eat. Incredibly different. So again, this kind of conversation around that table, somebody would be like, David, you're a little much, but give him another glass of Pinot Grigio. He's okay.
Or a sleeping pill, one of the two.
Yeah, right. And Jeremy, they already have bioengineered turkey. They have pretty much every type of bioengineered meats that are sort of the larger mainstream meats. Not like quail or anything yet, but in the turkeys, chicken, that sort of thing.
Why does it take so dang long to thaw out and cook?
I don't know. We get our ham. So, for example, I buy live animals from the Amish, and then we take them to Amish butcher, and we get everything done. Like when we freeze our hams, they're about 15 pounds each, but they take a good day and a half or longer to de-thaw, just enough for us to get it in the oven, warm it up, so then we can get into it with the knife there. Once that thing's frozen, you're looking at, a good 15-pound solid frozen one, a solid 24 hours or a little longer, even more, to unthaw that. Because I made the same mistake a couple years ago. We got the Amish, we got our hog butchered up, and I had this beautiful ham, and it was smoked up in their chimneys, and it was, wow, handmade, hand-smoked hams from the Amish. But I had frozen it, and I took it up, and I thought, oh, okay, 12 hours will be enough, and it surely wasn't. It was still really rock hard in the middle. So if you're going to unthaw that, give it a full 24 to 36 hours. And I don't know why it takes so long to get in and de-thaw the center of that thing. I don't know.
Any other cooking tips or recipes you'd like to share with the audience?
We made some elderberry syrup. So we got about 6 elderberry bushes out in our front yard, and we mixed and created this incredibly health tonic, cough relieving syrup out of just elderberries. So notice wild foraging is a good thing to understand as well. There's a lot of wild forageables out there that you can turn into different types of syrups and jellies right now, because service berries are out everywhere here too. These look like bright pink berries. Not very tasty on their own, but they can turn into some incredible jams. So if you're looking for something dynamite to bring to a dinner, like hand-picked service berries or hand-picked, whatever kind of wild blueberries, and turn it into a jam and bring it by, people will be blown away. A, you could do it by hand, but B, that it came from a natural source that wasn't grown using the traditional pesticide, herbicide, fungicide route. And the taste is also just completely different off a naturally raised product than it is off a store-bought, synthetic, when I wouldn't say synthetic, but just that full supply chain of depleted soils to grow it. So if you're looking for something like that, pick your own, make your own, gift it as your own.
Yeah, so David, sustainable living, growing our own food, you certainly have maybe mastered this, but certainly you know what you're talking about when it comes to this, because this is kind of how you live. So how would you say we start growing, which allows us then to be less reliant on the stuff that they're sending through the food supply chain?
I'm not a master. You could live for 500 years and still not be a master of understanding nature. It's complex. I've made probably 10 times more mistakes than I have successes, but I look at it as 10 different ways not to do that same thing until I get it right finally. So if you're going to come at it from that, oh, I got it wrong, this thing will never work, the mind frame is going to be the very first most important thing. You have to understand the best in the world, they all make mistakes when they're gardening. Nature is finicky. You have to know so if you have a house, like where's your light going to be in the morning, the afternoon, the evening? Like what are your soils like? Do you have to bring soil in? Do you need to get some compost in there? And you want to get some early successes. So do something that's real easy to grow, like the lettuces, things like that. It's almost no-brainers on, you put the seeds in, it's going to come up. Kales, that sort of thing, super easy to grow. Kohlrabi, these kind of really heavy, dense, thick greens that grow in these winter months or the fall months. But then again, like microgreening, early, easy win for you. If you just learn how to soak the seeds and rinse them every day, a couple times a day, you're going to watch them crack open. And after 6-7 days, you're going to have these long green shoots coming out that are so delicious. I highly suggest black-eyed peas. Those are the ones that are white with that little black dot on the top of the bean. Those are incredibly delicious. They grow fast. Again, there's some beans that are real difficult to sprout out to get them into microgreens or whatever. But those black-eyed peas, a kindergartner could do it. It's an early win. And once you can get those early wins, you can build the confidence on being able to go to another step of something else a little bit more complex. I'm going to live the rest of my life trying to work a little more complex and complex. You never stop learning. But the basic is, where's the sunlight? Your mind's got to be in the right frame that I make mistakes, I can correct it, we'll do something better next time. And then again, the right kind of seed choices in the very beginning to know that you can do it. Because when you see it come up, you're like, damn, I did that. Look at all that food. Look at all that salad that's there. Wow. And then from that point, your mind just blows wide open to, whoa, if I could do it, let's do the next thing. And then you get real kind of excited to continue to expand. And as soon as you get that, you're going to be excited to tell people. And I guarantee you're going to find at least one other person that does it. And then that conversation can start. And then you can start comparing information and maybe even helping each other, because two hands can get way more done than one pair of hands.
It's a very fulfilling feeling, isn't it, David? It's kind of like you can, what is the saying about teaching someone to fish?
Yeah, teach them to grow some food, teach them to garden, same thing.
That is our wish. Talking with David Dubine tonight. We've got about 10 minutes or so left in the program. David, anything else you'd like to discuss with the audience?
Well, yeah, thanks for having me on tonight, and get to share some ideas with you all here. Now, the food is the most important thing in our world, literally. Without food, we don't even have any society or any civilization. And if you go back through the past and you go back several thousand years, you'll find that when you can see the rise and fall of civilizations, and it was based on the amount of available food that they had. Because if we're in a warm, abundant time for food production, there's extra calories, and those extra calories allow people to live, more easy lives, and they have the time to solve problems and create. And this is, these abundance periods. But then we come into the dark ages periods when food production is very minimal. It's always, the weather patterns are off. They just can't get quite the right amount of yield coming out, so the populations decline, and also there's a stagnation of all parts of anything, mathematics, science, invention, writing, or anything that you can think of in our modern day. That's, when people have extra time, they can create, and then that abundance that comes out of that, and the new ways to think about. But in a food lean time, you're just back in just covering the bases for the basics to stay alive. There's no extra time to do all that fun stuff that the other previous warm period peoples had to explore with. So if food is this important that governments go to war over it, governments try to control citizens over it, it can be turned off or on at a moment's notice. We saw how COVID went. It should be a wake-up call for most people, especially after this EBT incident, that you're going to be way, way, way more responsible for what you're going to be able to grow. You're going to have to take your own food sovereignty back. Like we gave that away after World War II. Earlier in the program, I was saying 40% of all the food consumed in America during World War II was grown in family gardens or community gardens across America. They took that away from us. They got us onto the supermarkets. Oh, that's old school. That's old stuff. Your grandma did that. Why would you grow your own food? It's cheaper to buy it in the supermarket, easier. You got all this extra free time if you don't garden. They really took us away from that in schooling and just, general society and messaging through popular media. But why is that? They wanted us separated from the food on a system that can be controlled. Because if it gets nasty and they say, well, you need to do this now to get your digital rationing card, are you going to do it? If you're not quite in that whole system of 100% dependency on a certain way to get your foods, you're going to have a lot more leeway and movements around these problems versus being stuck in one single line because you only have one single choice because that's all you know and you have no option B because you never explored it. You went 100% down the drinking the Kool-Aid route with everything is going to be just hunky-dory down in these supply chains forever. And we saw that broke and how quickly people freaked out when it happened during COVID. Now, it seems that we're coming into another period of disruption being broadcast in advance by a lot of the media. A lot of governments are talking about it now, and they're really trying to get us on this digital rationing card or / digital IDs, in addition to switching us over into digital currencies, because a digital currency can be tracked. In Tesco in the UK, they're putting food buy limits right now. And even if you go to a different store, you're in their system, they won't let you buy it. But on a greater sense, the government could give everybody a certain number of digital tokens there, whatever they might be called in each country. And once you go through those, then your allotment for food purchases is over. It's all on the same, it's all on the blockchain, it's all in the system. You won't be able to buy. You won't have any black market tokens because they just won't exist because they're somewhere issued and can be tracked the entire length of their lifetime. So once we get into this, you're going to have the ID. You're going to have to only be able to buy this. You're only allowed to buy that. Then you'll understand the value of tonight's conversation and being a little more autonomous on your food growing and a little more self-sufficient with your neighbors. It'll allow you in a tremendous amount of leeway. When people are lined up, schizophrenic, freaked out in the stores when they can't get their food, you might be just sitting back going, all right, I'll let the chaos pass for a moment because I have some stored foods. I can still grow my own. We could do microgreens in a pinch if we need to. We got the freezers, pretty full. We're good. We can ride out the chaos for a minute versus going, I don't have any other option. I need to get out there with those people. I don't want to see you in that situation, so please prepare accordingly. We're at that point. I'm just saying we're at that point right now. Things seem to be a little bit more distractive than they were even during the COVID years. So I guess I'll leave it with that, Jeremy. We're in the ultimate distraction phase, and what are they distracting us from could be another whole show in itself. Of this distraction wave, this interference pattern is everywhere on all media, on any segment of media that anybody consumes across the planet. There's a once in a 5-year, once in a 10-year story across every segment, even cat stories and dog stories and pet lovers. There's those kind of once in a 5 or 10-year stories to draw the attention and get you glued into that across those types of genre of media. It's everywhere at one time, smothering and all encompassing, but why? And then they're all talking about the foods and the digital ID. I wonder if those two match up somehow.
Well, in the scenario that we've outlined, would we even be able to grow seeds? Would seeds be available? And if the answer to that is no, then that would mean the time is now to get those seeds and get them in the ground.
Yeah, true, but that's one point. But then you need to know how to harvest the seeds and then store those seeds for next year, so you have seeds, irregardless if you can buy them or not. Nature's not going to obey the rules. Nature's going to keep throwing seed down. I don't care what you do. It is going to drop immense amount of seeds. Nature overproduces. I kid you not. We have so much stuff in our garden. We really need to give it away to neighbors. We can't eat it all. It's impossible. There's too much. Nature is so bountiful. But if you let it come up to seed and you know how to save that seed, then you could trade it. Then it becomes valuable. If it's not available for sale, then you got something you literally can't buy. Then what's that worth? Seed storage is going to be a key skill to understand and master moving forward.
And so is sharing with your neighbor, loving your neighbor, maybe collaborating with your neighbor?
Oh, absolutely. Not only does it give you that feeling of, wow, it was great, to see their happiness and joy, but then it always comes back. It's not that you're expecting it to come back, but we got so many peppers this year. It was the best pepper year we ever had. We grew like 8 different types of sweet peppers, snacking peppers, and we give them away. There's too many. And then you'd be surprised. Some people, hey, my neighbor or my, somebody came over and visited and they brought this from this country, and they'll come over and share and give us some. It's always like that. It's just a never ending revolving loop. And I really love that because it's something about sharing the food you grew with somebody else that's really very special and kind of missing in today's world. Like I'll go back up to the city where my parents live, and I'll come in with a bunch of our eggs from the chickens or the peppers or whatever we grew, the lettuces and thing, and people are just blown away like, what? That looks way better than anything we got in the store over here, and it really is. And the seeds are still viable. You could take any of the produce we bring up to anywhere and just cut the seeds out and then dry them and then grow them in your own garden. But the comments we get every single time we bring produce up out of our own area here, back up to the city, again and again, wow, that looks so much better than anything. And they're talking about like Trader Joe's and Whole Foods and this kind of thing. And it looks even way better than that. So, I'm stoked on that. But trading food and giving food away to people is just a gift, because you've been so blessed that nature had provided for you such an abundance that you have extra that you can give away. Oh, that is a gift in itself.
Right.
That you've been provided that abundantly too, that you can then give it to somebody else. There's nothing like that feeling to realize how blessed you are.
Well, and that's a perfect message. Be thankful for what we have and what we're able to give others.
So true. Again, you go back in history, and this is the very time where all these villages and all the people in the towns came together to collect everything at one time and share it amongst themselves and kind of fatten up for the cold, lean years. And they could take stock of what they had and how much they could either eat as much as they wanted or ration through the winter until they knew they could get up to the next planting period. So this is a very special time in humanity through the last thousands of years as well, to share with everybody around you of the bounty that was given to you through the earth itself.